So I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, September 16th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu? Here. Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey? Ms. Colasetti? Here. Ms. Bishop? Ms. Wilkin?
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth?
Present.
Assessor Owana?
Here.
Thank you.
Next item is approval of minutes from the June 10th, 2024 meeting and the July 8th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Chris. Any substantial corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Next are any additions to the agenda? None? Presentations and public participation. We have no presentation scheduled, and I see no one in the public audience to participate. We'll move on to the committee to verify bills.
So, good evening. This month we had in the town fund $39,858.69 of expenditures. In the general assistance fund we had $204,445.45. Our total expenditures were $244,304.14. You have an itemized list of the expenditures, and then I can speak a little bit about the supervisor's memo. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Did you want me to give an update?
We need to approve the bills.
Or we have to approve the bills?
I move approval of paying the bills.
Second.
Moved by James, seconded by Mary Alice. Any further discussion? The clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of officers.
Thank you. So I just want to note that we have a number of new staff members that are listed in the memo. In particular, I want to point out that we have a new internship position, which is focused on reproductive justice and education. And we're building a campaign for reproductive justice. I use the word campaign to talk about how do we weave reproductive justice into the work that we're doing in a way that is trauma-informed and multicultural and multi-faith in its approach. So if folks have ideas, we're in the process of building that, and I hope that it can remain an internship long-term. Then I just want to point out in the supervisor's memo, we have 100, we've passed the 100 mark for general assistance. We have 101 active. It is an increase of 8 from last month. We've seen it creeping up for a while. 29 are homeless, and you can see the housing navigation support below, so I'm particularly concerned with the number of homeless residents because we had really worked to get that number down over time. This represents new individuals rather than folks returning to homelessness. We've been housing many folks from general assistance over the years. I wanted to point out that rental assistance has tapered off a little bit. I'm hoping that that will remain the case. We had 65, which is an incredible number, received and processed in August, down from 73. We did change the rental assistance rules. I let you know this was coming, but we've changed the cap to support households for 200% below poverty level, at or below poverty level, down from 225. And we are only providing 1 month of assistance rather than 2 months. I don't know who else to keep us within the budget without that unless we have additional funds. And right now, the homeless prevention funds that are available to us at the county level all go to RPC. RPC does work closely with our office, and we are in discussion for next year. Is there any way we can grow that pool and the townships in addition to RPC have access? But for this year, we've chosen to continue to, if we have particular cases that we think would be beneficial for RPC, we will forward them to them. But we're mostly covering, vast majority of Urbana residents. In terms of emergency housing and hotel, we have moved a lot of people into permanent subsidized housing and permanent supportive housing vouchers. It's the beginning of the fiscal year, and we typically have access to more vouchers. Also, our family voucher, our sponsor-based family voucher program is going well, and that pretty much once folks are in our family program, they can qualify for a family voucher. If they have a disability, we've been referring them for permanent supportive housing vouchers, which provides additional case management support. So that seems to be working well. We saw an uptick in utility assistance. So we are at 61, which is the highest number of cases in utility assistance since in the past year, except for June. We were at 63 in June of last year. So quite a bit of utility assistance. We really are going to have to crack that nut soon. And you could see we were part of the Yankee Ridge Back to School Night. We're really working to be trilingual in our approach, especially as needed. So we now have contractors who work with us who are fluent in Spanish and French and who come from social service backgrounds. And so they were able to accompany our staff at the back to school night. So that was really important part of the bilingual program. And then we were at Ivanhoe Estates for play dates in the park with Solidarity Gardens delivering produce. And that impacts a lot of our children in Urbana schools. So you see, we're part of the Urbana process. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Mary Alice.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Go for it.
The first one is do you ever follow up with people who are moved into permanent housing if they're able to stay in the permanent housing?
Absolutely. Our MOU with the Housing Authority dictates that if we help someone move into housing with a sponsor-based voucher, which is a MOU you approved about 2 years ago, and it just remains, we're required via that MOU to provide 12 months of supportive services. And what that means is a light touch check-in every month, plus they can call us at any time, which usually is what happens. So if they're behind on rent, utilities, other things come up, domestic violence, we basically provide that case management and supportive services. The piece I want to follow up with, and it looks like we're going to have a rental assistance intern, is I would like them to follow up on our rental assistance for us, but potentially for the consortium to look at data points related to rental assistance recipients. So that is not a requirement by any of our MOUs or grants, but I think it's important data. And in the before times, as we say, before the pandemic, we did have interns doing 6-month and 12-month checks. We just haven't had capacity, so I'm hoping to bring that back.
Is there any way that you can include the numbers when you talk about permanent housing on the percentage of people who are able to stay in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think we haven't surveyed the entire number of those housed. So what I'll probably do is pull out the segment that we are able to survey and give you the data points. Otherwise, it's not going to be accurate to the piece.
Okay, that'd be great.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the reason for the increase in general assistance.
I would say the entire, despite what anyone says on the television, the economy is not going well for poor people. And so the combination of a pretty significant jump in utility bills and in a pretty significant jump in food costs, and then we saw people's rent go up by up to $500 increase in 1 year. I'd really like, that is the reason that people are in this situation, is that the price of everything has gone up. While we've seen modest increases in minimum wage, but they go up by $1 a year, which was a great victory. We'll be at 15 by January, but it's nowhere close to catching up with the costs of goods and services. The basics, utilities, rent, and food are really the basic pieces. that's why we're seeing it. And, you know, I think that we are seeing unemployment. I mean, if you look in Urbana and you look at Champaign County, you see that unemployment rates are, you know, have definitely come down from the pandemic times. So we've seen some recovery there. But I think we're still dealing with the inflationary costs. And I would say the utility costs are, I mean, I can't believe some of the bills that I'm seeing. I really think we're going to have to think about a tool, probably working with the city, with RPC, like how do we actually help tenants weatherize their homes? Because there is a weatherization program for homeowners and for landlords, but if the landlord is not paying the utility bill, they have no incentive to weatherize that home. And so I'm seeing utility bills for an apartment that are twice the size of what I have for my house. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
I do know at RPC, there's been talk about a discount for gas on utility bills for people who are under a certain percentage. I don't know, didn't write down all the details, but it might be helpful to reach out to them and learn more about that.
Okay. Yeah, anytime, if you hear anything about utility assistance, if you could drop me a line, that would be awesome. We work with LIHEAP on a pretty much daily basis. So we have to confirm from LIHEAP that a participant is not eligible for LIHEAP for us to pay utility bills. So we have a real direct line daily conversation. So it might be something that's coming down the pipeline that we're not aware of.
Down the pipeline.
So we can certainly ask about it, but I hadn't heard of anything related to that.
I think that the thought is that it's just gas for now, but it might also be electricity in the future, so that might be helpful. And then my last question is I was having a conversation with some people at the Refugee Center talking about translation and them struggling to find people who could translate for Guatemalan refugees. And I'm wondering if they don't speak Mexican Spanish.
Yeah.
If you're running into any issues with that.
We have, through our contacts, we do have folks, I think it's called, Canabal. And we do have folks who are able to speak Canabal, and we're also able to, through our Appropriate app, it isn't necessarily on demand. Spanish and French is definitely like on demand, but if we make an appointment in advance, we do have a translation service that can allow us to do that. So we haven't had that issue. I have been trying to get the word out to social service providers that Proprio One is a really great tool. It's worked well for us. I've been sharing that news in case it's useful for other folks, and certainly feel free to share. It's very, very affordable, and there's no retainer. You just pay as you use it. So it's very affordable, I think, for smaller organizations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Ivana?
I have nothing to report beyond what we're going to for the budget later.
Okay, thank you. There's no unfinished business. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Resolution T 2024-09-005R, which is a resolution approving and authorizing the appointment of Cunningham Township Assessors and Supervisors Office Attorney. There's a correction to that title.
Thank you. Want to take the lead, and then I can, or either way.
Sure. So as you all know, we are still fighting the Carl/Presence case, and that was the predominant catalyst for seeking out legal representation, in addition to, of course, Fred Grosser retiring just a few months ago. And so while we were at the IAAO conference just a couple weeks ago, the International Association for Assessing Officers conference, we happened to run into a couple representatives from OMFM Law, and we've since been speaking with their office. We find that they are a good fit both for us and for the supervisors' needs moving forward with not just the Carl and Presence case, but also for any daily use that we would have. And I would just like to note that they will be in for the closed session as well. They're going to be calling in.
And I believe they may be on the phone at this point.
Yeah, I believe that I heard that above us.
I heard. Ross, are you with us?
Yes. This is Ross Steckler. I'm here, and I believe my colleague Jamin Avery is also on. we'd be happy to be.
That is correct.
in the closed session as well.
Good to
Yeah.
speak with you all.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us remotely. I just want to share a few notes and then have our proposed attorney introduce themselves. So both the assessor and supervisor's office has reviewed their background and credentials and had a deep dive conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces at play with some of the property tax cases, but I feel comfortable with this organization, Ross and his team, working on HR and employment matters. They can speak to this, but they are represent a number of townships in the Cook County area. They have property acquisition experience, general assistance experience, some tenant landlord relations, and can support us with some of our financial and audit-based questions. So we were really impressed with that, and it's hard to find folks with that specific township experience. And then they have pretty significant experience in property taxes. And Ross, I was just wondering if you could offer an introduction for your organization to the town board members assembled, and if you have any questions for them, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you all very much for having us and for considering, and thank you to supervisor and assessor for bringing us here. My name is Ross Seckler. I'm the partner to be the main point of contact for Cunningham Township. I chair our township division, I guess. We represent about 9 different townships. We're based, our main office is in Evergreen Park, Illinois, which is south suburb, right outside of Chicago. But we represent townships kind of all over, while focused in Cook County right now. We also represent some outside DuPage County and all the way out to Whiteside County at the very west end of the state. I personally represent 6 different townships and go do their meetings and serve as their direct points of contact as now, as well as our practice expands into all sorts of local government, municipalities, school boards. I represent a couple of mosquito abatement districts, so kind of everything under the sun. But focusing on townships is what I've done. I speak at TOI, the Township Officials of Illinois conferences all the time, and do their regional talks. I routinely give presentations on township-specific matters, whether it's governance and other related issues. In terms of township law, I'm more of a generalist. Whatever kind of comes across the desk, I can generally handle. But our firm is set up in a way that we like to say that we're the one-stop shop. Most of us have a general background and can serve as the general counsel for our government and township clients. But then we all have our various specialties. For example, Jamin on the phone has a specialty in both litigation and property tax from his experience, and as well as FOIA, OMA related issues from his experience serving as an assistant state's attorney. I do a lot of election related litigation and matters and advising, whether it's officials, advising clerks, etc. We have a whole employment law team, as well as a whole half of the firm that does specifically litigation. So we've talked briefly about some smaller suits just for cost-cutting measures, cost-saving measures could easily be handled primarily by local counsel in Champaign, in Urbana area, but in Champaign County. But we have the specialty to, and routinely will be representing all of our local government clients in both state and federal courts. We're ardent litigators and steadfast litigators, but we don't litigate just to litigate. It's kind of one of our principles. We won't just, a lot of places, and what we find frustrating when we take over some cases, frankly, is that they've been over litigated, overbilled, and then there's nothing else to do except try to, either you fight, you keep fighting to lose, and you've known you've lost for a while, or you find the best solution or settlement. That's not saying we won't ever we'll fight because we know we're right, and we'll get into of course, the pending matters before this board, and we're not deriding any sort of the strategy that was taken, because frankly we think we were right, but knowing that we make those assessments with our clients to make sure that we're not doing things that are just, we're not trying to just overbuild it. We're not here to just build a township and then get out. We are here to be your partner in any way, shape, or form that we can, and really that's kind of how we sell it. We try to treat our firm internally like a family. We try to then treat our clients like family, and really try to give back. And on call, you'll have my cell phone number. You call, text, based within reason, whenever. And if I'm not available for some reason during the day, if something's needed, then we have teams that work on our accounts that make sure that you'll always either have me or Jamin or some of the other partners and attorneys that are part of the proposal. Someone will be available at all times to be able to help with whatever may be needed. And so it's kind of the short spiel, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And happy to hopefully be helping the township and the assessor's office.
Any questions for Mr. Sackler? Mary Alice.
I actually had a question for Danielle and Ivana. Do you envision any need to have somebody physically present in the city of Urbana for any legal reason?
Generally, no. If we're thinking maybe like if necessary, maybe like once a year or so, just to meet everyone and have that present. But I don't. If there's for litigation, it depends on the situation in the case. Like I said, if for the non-tax related matters, having local counsel there for most things would be fine. I don't see it truly needing necessarily to be physically there or having the cost of being there. But of course, if needed and if something arises, and sometimes with litigation it depends on the judge. They accept remote proceedings or otherwise. If someone needs to be there, we will make that happen. That's not an issue at all. It's more, of course, wanting to save on expenses or anything like that. But I don't see it being an issue.
Yeah, likewise, when we discussed with the firm, in-person representation, and there will be a need at times, but oftentimes it's in Springfield, so there's travel required anyway if it's PTAB case. If I need representation on location, I have other options here locally. And oftentimes I have access, I've used Land of Lincoln, or I've used the tenant union's free legal staff person. And I don't think that this person would be assigned as a legal representation for the township, but I can purchase a one-off service. Say I need somebody locally to represent a civil case by a disgruntled client in court against a caseworker, and it's township business, and it's going to be dismissed. I wouldn't have this attorney come to Champaign County for that. I would take care of it locally.
Thank you.
And
Any other questions? Grace.
Do we need to amend this resolution to include the township? Is that right? Supervisor, not just the assessor?
Yeah, so the language that I sent you is that if your motion could be, we move approval of, let's see, I actually sent the exact language. We move approval of the resolution number, a resolution approving and authorizing the appointment of the Cunningham Township Assessor and Supervisor's Office Attorney, and then just move that the resolution should add and supervisors after every instance of assessors.
Thank you.
So if you could make that motion, we'd appreciate it, and then it would be clear that it's for both sides.
Are we ready for a motion? Do you have a question, Grace?
I would move.
Okay.
Make a motion. I'd move resolution number T 2024-09-005R as amended. Oh, gosh, now I'm getting off. Okay, so to amend it as a resolution approving and authorizing the appointment of the Cunningham Township Assessors and Supervisors Office Attorney with amendments of adding "and supervisor" to the resolution language in every instance that assessors appears.
Second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. Further discussion? Okay, could I ask that a clean, revised copy be sent to the clerk's office once this passes? Great, thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
That motion,
Sharice is here.
that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a closed session per 5 ILCS 120/2C11 for pending litigation. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Is that Sharice?
second. Yep,
Sharice has joined us. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. So just for the audience's information, we will be going upstairs for the closed session, and when we return, we'll continue with the township agenda. Okay, we'll need a motion to come into open session.
So moved.
Second?
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans, Ms. Hersey,
Yes,
Ms. Colasetti,
here.
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is ordinance T 2024-09-003, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2023-2024 amended. James.
I think we've talked about this quite a bit. I'd like to move approval. This is the update to the budget that reflected the actuals for the year, and we have to do that to keep it within a certain percentage. It's like changing the blueprint after you've built the house, but it's the way we do it. So I'm moving this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by James, seconded by Jaya. Any discussion?
I just want to share for the public that this is still a balanced budget. So essentially, we came under our initial budget. We just had line item transfers that exceeded the amount. We actually had a surplus of 1.227 approximately million.
Million?
Yes?
Also, as a point of order, I apologize. I don't think when you made the motion that you read the ordinance title.
Okay, I can do that. I move ordinance T-2024-09-003, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance fiscal year 2023 to 2024 as amended.
Second.
Grace, did you have a question?
Yes.
Comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that recognition?
Did we
Yeah,
get a
okay,
second?
thank you.
Jaya was the
Yep.
second.
I think we've talked about this before, and I didn't know if you could give us just a brief reminder, big picture, what you can, of the high ending balance. I think there are kind of some capital things maybe planned, or could you remind us this big kind of ending balance this year?
Yeah, so we actually were lucky to cover a lot of our, some of our staffing costs after our growth with grants, specifically IDHS grants, where those staffing costs were eligible. So that's a piece of it. And I think as I've shared with the public and the board, we are seeking to relocate our office by the time we're done growing. So like in a hot minute here, we'll be at 20 FTE. There will be at 20 staff members, and we typically have 3 to 5 interns as well, so trying to see 25. So we've essentially, our plan was from the beginning, although we saw very high levels of interest, we were able to save with IDHS grants some of our existing staff members who have been providing homeless services. We also were able to grow that base of staff members. We're also, this year, fiscal year we're in, able to grow both grants and staff members. And so the goal is to then, that becomes a nest egg for us to be able to purchase property.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item under new business is ordinance T 2024-09-004, which is an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for FY 2024-2025.
Would you like a motion on the table before discussion? We both
you want
have
it-
presentations.
Presentation first, please.
Okay, sure, you can go ahead. Actually, I'm sorry, I just want to indicate that the latest version of the budget that you should be looking at was emailed to you, and it incorporates a change that was requested by board members to the assessor's office last night, and a slight correction to how the general assistance budget is viewed. I also received a request from Mary Alice about the breakdown of the staffing line item that I'm happy to go over, and I sent in an email. But I just want to defer to the assessor to talk about some of the changes, since the changes are reflected under the assessor's office.
Go ahead, Ivana.
All right, so I did pass out a little handout at the beginning of the meeting to all of you that goes into a little bit greater detail what I'm going to briefly summarize. But after Mary Alice's email yesterday evening, we did have a phone conversation, so this is just recapping that information. Mary Alice, please feel free to correct at the end if any of this is incorrect or if it is not what we spoke about. So first, just to briefly go over employee bonuses, I fully understand after Mary Alice's explanation that this is not standard practice in most municipalities. It's just something that I have been historically used to, given that I've only worked in this office for the last 5.5 years. So we went ahead and corrected that. It's simply just been a reallocation of those bonus funds directly into everyone's salaries, so that'll be reflected within their biweekly paychecks. And as you can see on that handout, the numbers are updated as such. It's a $2,000 technical bonus, but in this case, we, like I said, reallocation to an increase for Tanmay, as he is my only full-time employee that will be there for the full duration of the fiscal year this year. And then following that, everyone else has $1,000 increase in that reallocation, given that Wayne and Jada are both working part-time. And then our new hire, which will be starting full-time, hopefully around the first or second week of January, considering that's only halfway through the fiscal year, meaning that they would only have been doing half the amount of work as a general full-time employee. They will also only be receiving that $1,000. That will technically change in the coming years if we do if we do continue to reallocate in this appropriate way. Following that, she addressed employees with full-time positions outside of township, and she requested that we use a system that establishes a clear process for approving and documenting work, recording time work, and calculating compensation for work done outside of township. I have absolutely no problem in implementing a system like this. However, due to the timing of the request being about 24 hours prior to this meeting, I asked if I could have until the next meeting to actually have that implemented. I feel that is a reasonable request, and Mary Alice did agree to that. So I will have information and implementation done for that by the October meeting, whenever that is. I do not know the specific date. And then lastly, addressing the travel budget. If you look all the way down to point D under the travel budget in my handout, I have reduced it to $13,500. And my reason for that, as opposed to reducing it to the requested value of around Champagne's value, I believe that she actually mentioned Champagne's value being around $11,000, but the requested value of $10,000. The reason why I declined that specifically is because after looking at all of our expenses and what it would take to send at least myself and potentially one other person to a conference each year, in addition to the educational courses that we would like for everyone to be able to take according to whatever credentials they're working towards, while also maintaining their CIAO, which stands for Certified Illinois Assessing Officer Certification. I realized that that number was actually closer to the range that I gave Mary Alice on the phone, between 12 and 15,000. I find that around 13,500, leaving about that 500 for a cushion within the travel budget, is most appropriate. I can bring a more itemized list of our travel expenses to the next meeting if you guys would all like, but this is what I have considered to be most appropriate, taking a look at previous year's receipts, taking a look at this year's rates for what it would cost for different courses given by the IAAO, which is our International Association of Assessing Officers, as well as the IPAI, the the Illinois Property Assessment Institute, and the Township Officials of Illinois events that they put on. So if you all have any questions about the reductions that I have made, please feel free to ask me. But other than that, there's more detail within the handout.
Any questions? Mary Alice?
First, I want to say thank you to Ivana in terms of her openness to having a conversation. We had a really good, constructive conversation. I felt very comfortable at the end of that we were moving in the right direction. And I just appreciate her pulling this information together so quickly. I did want to say, number one, that I feel very comfortable with the 13,500 travel budget. I think that you really did your due diligence in looking over those numbers, so I appreciate that. Then in terms of the RUNA system, I did want to clarify that it's actually a system built by the university, so it's not something. No, you didn't. That's fine. I just thought it would be some kind of template that you could look at in terms of the types of questions that they ask. So something that you can just literally create a document and just fill in, so to speak. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then my last and final question is you had mentioned that. I cannot pronounce their name.
Is it Tanmay Singh?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can just say Tanmay.
Tanmay is the one full-time person. You intend to hire another full-time person mid-year. Can you tell me what percentage time Wayne and Jada are working?
Could you be a little bit more clear with your question? I don't quite understand what you mean.
Sorry, what percentage of an FTE Wayne and Jada are working? Are they working as a 50% equivalent? Are they working as a 25? They're both working as 50% equivalent? Mm-hmm. Okay, and so looking at that, Jada and Wayne's amounts are very different.
Yes, that is due to their level of experience. Jada has only had her CIAO for approximately 2 years, and she's also a year younger than I am, so she has barely been in the assessment field at all, and she did not come from a background relating to assessments whatsoever.
Okay, all right, so that's appropriate. I'm curious, Wayne, if you multiply it by double, would be making about 30,000 more than you.
So Wayne has a significantly higher salary at Cook County than he did here, and he is not willing to work for other offices at such a low rate. And considering the relationship that he already has within this community, with everyone who already works in our office, I find this to be a reasonable amount for him to work part-time, considering that he would not offer at such a low rate work for any other office of this size. I think that he adds an extreme amount of value to the office, considering that, one, he has mentored me in the time that I have been working there. Two, he has an extensive history with the Carl Presence case and understanding that. And three, he has the most amount of valuation experience in the office, and that is absolutely integral as we continue to move into, well, we already are digitizing the office, but as we continue to move through that and understanding especially automated valuation models, how those work, how they need to be implemented, and I just personally believe that we are getting what we are paying for in this instance. If you disagree, please let me know, but that is how I feel personally.
I will say it's rather high, especially considering the rates of the other employees. I'm also curious to hear your thoughts about perhaps having a permanent person instead of Wayne and Jada. If we had a permanent person in this position, I feel like it would be more stable.
And I'm sure that that's true, but we have to remember where we are and the resources that we have available. Someone who would have the combined knowledge or even if we're talking half the knowledge of what Wayne and Jada have combined, that would still be a significant find to get them to come here and to get them to be able to work for us. People don't want to come to Cunningham Township, Illinois to work. They want to go to Cook County. They want to go to, Orange County, things like that. They don't want to be in smaller areas like this in order to progress. So finding somebody who already has at least more experience than I do in the office and that Tanmay does is very difficult. So if that is something that is a potential in the future that we have the ability to do, we can definitely look into that. But even as we've tried to even as we've tried to discuss at state conferences and at international conferences with people who are, of course, in the state, if they know of anyone who would be appropriate for our position at the rates that we're offering, the answer is frequently no. So specifically considering that, it's either that we are going to most likely find somebody who is less experienced that we would hire at a lesser rate, or it's that we would find someone who is more experienced that would either be a higher rate or just be an equivalent cost to, let's say, an automated system that might do the work of a human being.
So I guess my concern is I hesitate to have an employee make such a significant difference over the supervisor, a supervisor of any group. I think it's not necessarily appropriate, but that's my opinion, not necessarily what others think. So I would be curious to hear what others think.
James?
I guess I kind of I have a similar concern to Mary Alice. I do feel like in this circumstance, it feels more like a consultant, like a highly paid consultant for specific expertise. And in that circumstance, you wouldn't necessarily be hiring a consultant half-time. You'd be hiring them for the things that you need that specific expertise for, and you could be having another person working to grow into that kind of role with the money that you wouldn't be spending on a consultant. So it feels like a consulting rate. It feels like the kind of rate that you would charge if you were self-employed and selling your expertise to other townships. I do kind of wonder. I mean, in the state of Illinois, we have 102 counties, and I could not venture to guess how many townships we have. How do any of them function with staff for their township assessors? Because they all have to have one, right? Or they're contracting with somebody else to do it for them, right? But we're talking about Peoria, we're talking about Springfield, we're talking about McLean County. There are other population dense, comparable municipalities in the state that must have employees that are working for them. So there has to be, there should be, I feel, individuals that we could hire in to be full-time employees. So I understand the value of Wayne's expertise specifically about this area because about the time he spent working here. So I'm not disputing that a little bit of his time is worth a lot in our circumstance and with the things that we have going on, particularly if you want to talk about the Carl case or other things that have gone on and been major things. But I do wonder in the long term if we can't find another path to this in that particular question.
Grace?
Could you remind me of the structure? Is one of these a deputy assessor? Is one of these staff on the list the deputy assessor?
So yes, but deputy assessor is not the highest you could be. That is just the term that we apply for anybody who has their CIAO within the office that is not an intern. So yeah.
So all of them would be considered deputy assessors then?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, just by title. That doesn't actually result in any hierarchy.
Okay, thank you. I think also have some concerns about some of the rates and discrepancies here, and I appreciate the insight, and I do understand that kind of valuable historical knowledge and things. Yeah, so I think that, for now, it makes sense, but I agree, I would like to see it change somehow, kind of tapering off, or maybe a consultant thing. I do think it sets potentially a dangerous precedent that someone could step down and come back and be working less at a higher rate for that. I understand in this unique situation, but I think it potentially sets kind of a slippery slope precedent for future. So, yeah, also some concerns, but nothing that I want to yank out from under the rug at this point. But I do think that if we could work towards getting away from that kind of model, that would be helpful.
Sorry.
Jaya?
Sorry. So I think a few things. One, I do think it would be helpful to have benchmarks, right, of like, what is somewhere like like whatever the township for Bloomington is, like what are their rates for folks, and it may be that a consultant is more appropriate, right, and then it may be that we end up paying a similar amount, but I think that having some sort of benchmark for why are we setting these rates would be really helpful. I can certainly envision a situation still where we're paying a consultant and that compensation may result at a higher rate. We see that with a lot of the elected officials who are up here, right? That there are other members of city staff who may be paid more depending on their role than even an elected official. Like, I think that is an important piece for us to keep in mind, that there's a precedence for that too. But I do think that it would be helpful, just as we think about kind of fiduciary responsibility, to say, how are we setting these numbers, right? Whether it's we're saying we need someone with this particular range of expertise, and I think you've done a lot of this, but being able to show it to us, right? Being able to say, we posted this position, we weren't able to fill it. Here's my proposal, is just to use a consultant or whatever instead, and here's why. I think that would kind of alleviate some of those concerns of, like Grace said, again, this is not about the individuals, but thinking more about the structure of, if someone steps down from a role, leaves, and then takes a new role and is making more, I think that can create a challenging dynamic. So just thinking about how do we put those guardrails in place so that, if it's not you or Wayne, right, it's somebody who comes in with ill intent, that the township doesn't end up in a bad place.
No, I understand. I can definitely do that as we continue on.
James?
Okay, if I could say a few things about not that particular point. I do want to thank you very much for this the summary of the things that you're looking at. I really believe strongly that increasing the pay for our staff to be part of their pay will be a step towards longer term, hopefully being able to entice people to work for us, as opposed to the bonus model, which was, I have to admit, a little uncomfortable from a standpoint of not seeing it on other roles in public service. It's not common in that I have seen. I do appreciate that. I think it's a step forward for compensation and transparency. Likewise, the items about tracking time and having a more formal way of looking at considering whether employees working other jobs have either a conflict of interest or have maybe a claim on their time that would interfere with their ability to do their job. I think that's another huge step forward for transparency. It's not that those things are inherently a problem. It's just having a check and balance on it so that your awareness is higher, and the tracking of time is really important from a standpoint of being able for you as the leader and for us as the town board to be able to demonstrate to the public that we know what's going on and it is appropriate. And I want to reiterate that I believe strongly that travel and training to be licensed is important, but I really appreciate you looking at the budget and making an adjustment so that we're being prudent with those funds. And I'm going to be supportive of the training and the travel that we need to do, as long as you have a good case for how we're doing it and it fits in, not line item. I'm not, you talked about having a more breakdown of exactly what the travel is, but this kind of review of it gives me a lot more confidence that we're doing the travel we need to do, and it has a purpose. So I really want to say how much I appreciate what a step forward this is. I believe it is a step forward for transparency and making us a stronger appearing fiduciary body for the township.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And please, if any of the rest of you have concerns at any point, please feel free to let me know. I'm not always available by phone call, but you can usually catch me either by text or email. So thank you for James and Mary Alice bringing these concerns to me, because I do agree that it offers much more transparency this way. So thank you.
Are we ready for a motion?
I would like to move a motion, but I do have a question in terms of how to handle the changes. What is the best way for us to do that?
In regards to the version that was submitted after the modifications,
These modifications have been changed on the most updated version of the budget that was sent to you, so it does reflect the appropriate numbers for the assessor's office.
Okay, I can't find that, but
And there's only one number change. Is that correct?
It would be the salary line has a slight change, a slight reduction, somewhere around $3,000, and then that reduction of approximately $6,500 for the training and travel budget line for the assessors. Those were the only two that were changed from my office, though.
I don't believe anything was changed from Danielle's office.
Can you hear me? Okay, it's on. So the difference between the two, you're gonna see 4 places of change from the town packet to what I sent you, which is not uncommon. That sometimes there'll be variations between the packet and the final. In this case, especially in response to town board concerns. So the first would be personnel salaries under the assessor, which went from $263,249 to $259,749. The second is training and travel. That went from $20,000 to $13,500. And then I want to point out 2 changes. Mary Alice, you had asked for a breakdown in the salaries and how much was grant funded versus not grant funded. And I sent that on email to you. I just wanted to point out that the supervisor has, under the supervisor fund, our staff is at $163,845, but that about $32,000 of that is reimbursed through a grant. And then the GA staff total is $691,236, and about $384,172 are reimbursed by the grant, about $370,000 from the levy. So I wanted to share that information. In the process of pulling that information, I noticed an adjustment that needed to be made in the personnel. So I was able to actually adjust the personnel down. There was an extra counting of a health insurance reimbursement, and so the differences in the numbers, essentially in the version that I sent you, is you will see the salary line item under general assistance, and then the personnel other expenses both reduce. So essentially in the town packet, you have $699,972 in salaries and $306 in personnel and other expenses. And the version that I'm asking you to move is $691,236, which is about $8,000 less. But there is a significant difference in the personnel other expenses, dropping down to $264,580. So essentially, we're asking you to move the newest version of the budget that was sent to you, which represents a reduction in both the assessor and the general assistance fund. Instead of seeing a net loss of $62,213, we're now proposing a net loss of $1,515.
So I do want to say that I think we've had an email issue because the version that you're talking about did arrive to me, but it wasn't until 7 o'clock tonight.
That's correct.
Oh, is that?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct, because when I asked, so our finance director is on vacation, so we're going to thank her now for working on her vacation. I asked her Mary Ellis's question, and she started calculating numbers and realized that there was a health insurance piece adjustment that she wanted to make to correct the numbers. So that's why you received that. And then I wanted to make sure that Ivana's, I know you all spoke very recently, and I wanted to make sure that the assessor's changes were in the final. So I wanted you to have a PDF of the actual final. And I will say, certainly I would encourage you to bring up issues closer to the time that we originally put the budget on file, because it would avoid a situation where I'm sending you something at 7 o'clock the night that we're supposed to vote on it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I see now, and all the changes as described are in there, but the way you were talking about it, it felt like something that had been sent out before we came to the meeting tonight, and it was not, so.
Do all the town board members have access to the final revised budget that was sent at 7 o'clock tonight? Are you comfortable voting on that? Okay. Could we have a motion?
I will move approval of ordinance T 2024-09004, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2024 to 2025, based on the PDF that was sent to City Council at 6:57 is what's in my inbox for approval.
There's a second.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by JF. Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey, Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the town board, we stand adjourned. And this meeting will be followed by the regular meeting of the Urbana City Council.